You may.
Thank you, sir. I may ask you then to start with your opening remarks.
Okay, thank you very much. We had already actually accepted the recording from our side.
Yeah.
But I was saying that in order for us to be able to deal with this subject properly, we've got to understand what determines the integrity of the elections. There are quite a number of people who, after every election, they will say, were the elections free and fair? But people have never really asked, what is the standard that you are using to be able to come to this determination? Now, from our side, as the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa, we developed a tool that we call the Integrity Wheel. The Integrity Wheel basically identifies about 5 key areas that we use to make a determination on the integrity of the elections. The first one is the legal framework. Legal framework is very necessary and important because it determines the framework within which the elections are going to take place. If you do not have a proper legal framework, either through the constitution or the electoral law or regulations, it means that there's going to be inconsistency in terms of how you apply the law, because whoever is running the elections will be using their own discretion for the management of the elections in their respective areas. So legal framework that will be able to determine in detail how each and every aspect of the elections have got to be run is absolutely critical. The second aspect is basically the voter's role. The voter's role determines who is eligible to participate in the elections. In an election, you've got to make sure that only those who are eligible participate in the elections, and that those who are not eligible to participate in the elections should not be there at all. And allow me to digress a little bit and say, I've heard many people saying 2024 must be like 1994. But remember, the elections in 1994 were neither free nor fair. And Judge Krechler, when he announced the election results, he said the elections were substantially free and fair. Now, that is a major difference between what we've come to expect in the management of the elections from 1994 to now, because there are quite a number of issues, and then I'll deal with those issues at the time when the questions arise in terms of the comparison between 1994 and 2024. But the third issue is basically the political environment. Political environment plays an important role in the management of the elections. Firstly, those who are managing the elections are the kind of the people that we can trust to manage the elections. Is the commission such that we can trust the way they manage the electoral processes? Are they appointed in a manner that is transparent and where everybody understands how they got to be in the positions that they are elected, they are appointed in? But within that, there is also a situation where some areas, like in 1994, were regarded as no-go areas, where certain political parties could not campaign in those areas because they were regarded as the strongholds of certain political parties. Now, if you've got an election where some of the political parties and candidates cannot contest because they are told that it is a no-go area for them, clearly that will have an effect on the electoral process. The fourth aspect is the capacity and integrity of the electoral staff. If you've got the election that is run by electoral staff that is favoring one political party or the other, that will obviously not lead to the outcome that can be regarded as free and fair. So it means those who run the elections must understand the framework within which the elections operate. They've got to have the capacity, and they must make sure that they manage the elections evenly and fairly and within the law. And if they don't do that, it means that you'll have inconsistency in quite a number of areas where in one area elections are managed in a particular manner, and in another area elections are managed in a certain way. And that on itself will compromise the integrity of the elections. The last one, and which is also equally important, is the integrity of the logistics. The logistics of the elections, what time do you open the stations, what kind of materials are available, are the materials available at the same time in all the areas, do you have the right materials at the right time, in the right quantity, in the right place. If you are in Cape Town, you are contesting the elections, and then let's assume for a moment it is municipal elections, and you've got the ballot papers of Johannesburg in Cape Town, because the logistics were managed badly. It means that now, all of a sudden, the people in Cape Town are faced with having to deal with candidates they don't know. And then how do you even begin to have an election when a ballot paper that is supposed to be used for an election, it's actually a wrong ballot paper? Or alternatively, the ballot papers arrive in small quantities, and therefore you've got people waiting in a queue for a long time, and they're not able to cast a vote, and some decide to leave the voting station because the materials are not there, or they're told the materials are actually finished. So management of the logistics of the elections is a critical element that determines also the integrity of the electoral process. So I want to pause there, having posited those views as views that really are important in terms of the determination of the integrity of the elections and in terms of ensuring whether the elections are free and fair.
Thank you so much, sir, for quite an insightful presentation on what you do in that space. It's obvious that this is very, very serious and quite engaging. Now, you said something very profound in terms of the fairness of the elections, bringing to the fore the legal framework, the voters' role, the political environment, the rating of whether elections are free and fair, and then the integrity of the elections. I think this is where now we come in and we get the ordinary citizens, ordinary South Africans who stand up and say, if this is what we go through with the elections, and there's so much that needs to be done, and somehow it becomes evident that some of the things that are meant to be done do not fit in with the expectations or what is defined as a proper process, then we see the formation of the civil societies. Now, civil societies can come in many ways, but they only have one agenda: to try and improve the quality of living, to try and improve our call for services and service delivery and fairness in a number of things. Now, I would like to invite President Solly Moeng, who is the founder of Don Valley Reputation Managers and a brand and reputation management expert. He's also a public relations and communication management specialist, a freelance writer and a columnist. Okay, he helped leaders weather the storms of reputational crises and build premium brands via the CEO profiling blueprint. Now, Mr. Moeng, here we go. We understand the process of the elections and the things that needs to happen. And then eventually we have the elections. And once we have elected our leaders, there comes more problems or more challenges in terms of governance, in terms of management, in terms of ensuring that they live up to whatever manifesto or charter they've put forth. Now, what prompted you to consider looking at a civil society like the South African movement? Based on what you've heard, just give us an overview on your understanding and the reasoning behind forming a civil society. Mr. Mweng?
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. Look, like many South Africans who just wanted to focus on, on the professions they went to university for, many of us, including myself, found ourselves bordering the line of being accidental politicians. I love South Africa, and my initial jobs were involved in marketing South Africa in other parts of the world. I was first in Canada and then in the USA. And my job was to protect this brand. So I've always looked at South Africa as a brand, as a destination, but I still do. And I know what is needed to successfully manage a reputation for a destination brand. And when I saw, the direction in which this brand was taken, as opposed to what was expected, what was promised in the beginning, I thought, you can't just keep talking and talking and talking. You need to get involved. You need to get your hands dirty. I have no ambition to become a politician, but I think that the mistake of what we have in South Africa, the weakness, is that we have given too much power in the hands of politicians, especially because of our history. We have a bunch of people that many still refer to as our liberators. We come from a very painful past as the country. And at some point in the early 90s, things began to change. And then we started talking about a government of the people, for the people, by the people. And a lot of people started saying, well, we have the right people in government. We can go home and do our own stuff. We don't have to be worried. Even institutions such as the IEC were given blind trust. We believed everything that came from it. But I think over time, there was a time when we needed to stop and say, wait a minute, are we being taken for granted? I think that we have. I think that lack of civil education or civic education in South Africa is a big problem for our democracy. People don't ask the right questions. Everything that Terry has just mentioned in terms of what is required for any election to be seen to be free and fair, and to have the integrity it requires. I think a lot of people don't ask themselves those questions. We just like to wear fancy T-shirts and caps and go to elections on election day and look around. If nobody got clapped by another person, it was a free and fair election. But we know that if any of the 5 things that Terry mentioned goes wrong, and a lot of it goes wrong before the actual day of elections, not on the day of elections, if any of those things, and those things don't just go wrong because somebody forgot to do something. It's not always that way. It's because somebody tampered with something. You could say, okay, we're going to provide less ballot material over there because we don't think those people are going to support us. You could logistically make something go wrong, so that you mess up the system. You could also, in terms of the voters' roll that he also mentioned, you could also exclude something from people from the voters' roll. So I'm really happy that he mentioned all of those things. And I think South Africans need to be involved. I think the civil society has given too much power to politicians blindly. It's now for 30 years. I believe strongly that civil society in South Africa needs to take back some of the power. Too much power has been placed in the presidency in the hands of politicians. We talk about these people as if they are heroes. I'm in my WhatsApp group, in my neighborhood WhatsApp group in Wanbek, Cape Town, and I have to constantly challenge the councillor because she thinks that she's doing us a favor. She's the hero. I have to constantly remind her she needs to calm down. She's not a hero. She's supposed to be the servant of the people. So when we criticize the city of Cape Town for its failures, because it has failures like many cities around the country, we're not criticizing her as a person. But we tend to treat councillors, politicians as heroes. We need to stop that. We need to start changing the dynamic. We need to start taking back some of the power. So I thought, let's form a civil society movement whose aim it is going to be, and it's an ongoing process, that we get to a point where it's not up to politicians and political parties to tell us what is going to happen. It must be up to us to tell them what's going to happen. If we want to believe that parliamentarians, for instance, work for the people, we know up to now they work for their political parties, their political bosses. They don't care about what you and I think. They will vote in a different direction if their bosses say this is how you're going to vote on key issues. Even when the people are saying, but we don't like that, don't go this way, go this way. They think that they're employed by their political bosses. That has to change. It's not just the electoral process, but all of that, or package, the system that we have trapped in has to change. So we, the people, need more power, need more involvement in how our democracy functions beyond just voting. We have to vote, but we also have to remain committed and active, and we have to look over the shoulders of these politicians all the time. And there's got to be more power given for civil society to approve or not to approve certain decisions taken by politicians. Right now, once we voted them into office, whether at local level or at national level, then they forget about us. They just do their own thing. We don't matter until they need to go to the next elections. This has to stop. And my last thing, I really do think that if we get to a point where civil society has got the power to realize, first of all, the power it has in its hands. We must consider politicians as our employees. We write their job descriptions. They don't write their own descriptions. Right now, they write their own job descriptions, the terms and conditions of their employment, and we are just observers. So we are reduced to looking at events in our own country as if you're watching a movie in which no role was allocated to us. That has to change. That is what drives me.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is just an intro. We're really going to get into the real crux of the matter, and as we engage in this conversation this evening. Now, you mentioned a number of very important things, which calls for sustainability. Now, I would like to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, James Zantios. He's a sustainability assurance provider and a stakeholder engagement practitioner, an Afrocentric enthusiast, a political, social, and economic commentator. He's a member of the steering committee of the United South Africa Movement, TUSAM, a civil society organization whose mission is to inspire and rally individuals and groups, civil society, politics, business, and other sectors to work together towards effective and sustainable democratic change in South Africa. He has a systems analysis background, a postgraduate diploma in telecommunication management, and he has an MBA. Now, this is a real academic MBA, not the one that I have. James, I have an MBA as well. And that stands for married but available. Let's leave that for another day. James,
Yes,
much
sir.
has been said. Mr. Tselane spoke about a number of things that we need to consider before elections. Mr. Muyeng speaks about the importance of us electorate holding us as community, holding the people we elect into power responsible. But how do we sustain that? How do we make sure that happens? How do we make sure that we are engaged properly from your level of understanding? Ladies and gentlemen, James is a South African in diaspora. He's currently based in Canada. Over to you, James.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say hello to the fellow panelists and to everyone that's listening and viewing from abroad. Some very significant points were mentioned. Mr. Tselane mentioned the 5 elements of a fair election, and followed up by Solly's comments about some elements that can tamper with that, the intentional tampering. But I'd say that not just intentional tampering. Sometimes, we know that people have been appointed that don't have the capability to handle the position, or don't know the elements that are involved in what they're supposed to do through whatever, call it catered deployment. And he also mentioned that the councillors they like to dictate what they tell their citizens, and they kind of act. Councillors and politicians kind of act like they're kings or demigods, and it's not the way it is. It's up to civil society to inform the citizens that those politicians and the councillors and all of them are there because of the citizen, because of an election. They're appointed that position. Those people aren't there because it's a God-given right of birth, like a king or a monarchy. So it's up to civil society itself to help educate citizenry at large about the value of voting. And I'd say the greatest asset that a country has and its people is a vote. It's a finite thing. You only have so many people that can vote. You don't have any more until there's immigration and they become citizens. So it's a finite thing at a specific time. And people achieve political positions through the vote. And it's up to civil society, individually and as a collective, to help educate everyone about the whole process of democracy and voting and how the politicians achieve their positions, and to hold those politicians to account for the policies and manifestos that they have created. And that in itself will help sustain democracy in the long run.
Okay. Thank you, James, for weighing in and in this conversation and just giving us an overview of what we will be talking about. Now, this is now getting real serious. We've spoken about 5 things that we need to look at: the legal framework. We've spoken about too much power in the hands of the politicians, accountability, and cadre deployment. Now, I would like us to now take a very interesting turn and look into these individuals that are elected into power, that are in power, that by virtue of them being elected, we expect them to perform. But for us to let them perform to our satisfaction, there are a number of things that we need to look at: governance, trust, and many other things that go along with that. May I introduce to you a very special friend and a friend of the Africa Brand Summit, Regine Leroux, based in Cape Town. She is a founder and a managing director of Reputation Matters. She is a reputation management specialist. She believes in building resilient businesses that any other person who is in business want to see the business run properly. She holds a communication management honors degree cum laude at the University of Pretoria and completed an MCom Master's Communication within a year. She founded Reputation Matters in the year 2005. The company measure and manage companies' reputation using unique Repudometer measurement tool. The tool has given many organizations great insight into understanding what areas within their business is building or breaking down their reputations, as well as greater insight into understanding their stakeholders. Reputation Matters quantify companies' intuitions and arm them with facts and figures to present around the boardroom table. Now, sometimes we think that government does not run like a corporate. At the end of the day, both corporate and governance have to be held accountable. They have to have a set of ethics. They've got to have. They have to be held accountable. Now, for anybody to believe and trust on a person and what they do, certainly there is some measurement that needs to be done. So you have conducted a very interesting study on trust and the trust barometer, which you will be releasing soon. Take us through, in the case of South Africa, and what is going on and what you've had so far. What exactly is happening, and where are we as a people in trusting the government and the councillors and everyone else whom we voted for. Over to you, Rechen.
Thank you so much, Victor, and evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. For just first and foremost, I think what's really, really important is the fact that I'm not a politician, and as Solly also mentioned, I have no desire to become a politician by any means of the imagination. But I think what is really, really important, and what you mentioned, Victor, is that element of building trust. So just to clarify, or just to add, is trust forms a really critical part of a reputation, of integrity, of ethics, and that's what we want to focus on. And I think trust is built on actually delivering on what you promised, and I think that's where a massive shortfall is when it comes to people hoping for things that was promised to them, which didn't happen. But it all starts and it all boils down, and all the research that we've done, and as you've mentioned, we do reputation studies, we do employee studies, we do brand identity, and we're currently actually busy working very closely as well with the African Public Relations Association, APRA, the PRCA, to measure ethics and the PR landscape on the African continent, because the role and the importance that communicators play when it comes to building a reputation is absolutely crucial. And it all boils down to your core values. That is the cornerstone when it comes to building your reputation, building ethical companies, is not to just have you mentioned the word manifesto earlier as well. I mean, there's wonderful, beautiful manifestos out there. Corporates have beautiful ethical statements and values, but it means absolutely zero if you are not going to be living up to and delivering on what you have promised to your people. So and you mentioned as well, government needs to be managed as a business. And I think any entity, NGO, government, big, small, all your organizations need to have governance principles in place. And I think a very key word that has been mentioned throughout as well, and is that accountability. It's all good and well to say we have values, we have a vision, we have a mission, we have all of these great things, we have all of these promises, and then there's absolutely zero accountability for a person, for the organization. And I think that is where people need to start raising their voices. So Solly, you mentioned the fact that there's too much power, and I do think we need to start taking that power back as well. Yeah, so that the crux of it is to have values that everybody can live up to, and delivering on that. It's to make sure that we can live up to those standards.
Accountability, ethical conduct, and it's governance. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I?
Now, yes.
If it's okay, while we're still on the branding and reputation discussion, before Terry comes back,
okay.
I just want to say, when I talk to people about managing reputation, every brand, whether it's a person brand, a destination brand, corporate brand, any brand needs 4 things. Okay, in my experience, 4 things that are crucial, including, and we're talking about South Africa now, a destination brand. You need a vision. If you look at the Constitution of South Africa, just read the preamble to the Constitution. We talk about the kind of country we want to build post-apartheid. Just read, if you can't read the whole thing, just read the preamble. It tells you what pain are we healing from, are we walking away from, and what kind of country do we want? A united country where everybody works together, where race doesn't determine the fortunes of a person, etc. It's a successful economy that is inclusive, all of that stuff, right? That's the vision. As a brand, you need to say, if you close your eyes, so if you think of Brand South Africa, imagine yourself in 1994, close your eyes, think what do you want to see in 30 years time, in 2024? And then if you come back to 2024 and you open your eyes, is what you see consistent with what you thought we would see? And a lot of people will say, no, it's not. This is not where we hoped we'd be. Now, that's the first thing, vision. The second thing is a set of values. All right. What are the values that are going to underpin your journey towards realizing your brand vision? What are the things that are acceptable? What are the things that are not acceptable? In terms of a country, you talk about the rule of law. Now, if you're going to end up with the rule of law where some people are more equal than others, some kind of Orwellian animal farm where things apply to regulations apply to some people and not to others, you're going to mess up things. If you have a company where you say these are the values that we live by, but the guys in the C-suites can do their own thing, then you're going to end up with all sorts of subcultures. People are going to say, well, if they can do these things, why can't we do these things? They don't lead from the front. They don't set the tone from the front, so we can do our own thing. This is exactly what happened to South Africa. So vision, values. The third thing is leadership. And by leadership, I'm not saying just somebody with a PhD or MBA. You're talking about people who are armed with high levels of ethical wherewithal, emotional intelligence, empathy, balance. When you lead a country as diverse as South Africa, you can't lead it with anger. If you still have unresolved childhood anger issues, you can't lead a country like South Africa. And if you think that your people are more important than everybody else in South Africa, they need to come on top, then you can't lead South Africa. So you need to be emotionally really, really mature to lead a country like South Africa. Unfortunately, after Mandela, we've never had a leader like that. We really haven't. Right. So, vision, set of values, leadership. What kind of leaders do you want? That will set the tone from the front. That will live the values that other people will look at and say, you know what, that's my leader. And a leader who is not afraid. When you have a leader who is desperate to be loved, like Ramaphosa is, you can't be the leader. When you have a leader who knows that each time you say to somebody, that's wrong, you can't do that, somebody else is going to point another finger at you and say, what about the other stuff you did over there? You can't be a leader. The minute you lose the moral high ground, you can't be the leader. Number 3. Number 4, you need to have a sense to have a sense of like exercise a 360 degree of your brand, because no brand, whether you're an individual, a destination, a corporate, whatever, no brand lives on an island of its own. So South Africa lives in SADC, we live in Africa, in the context of the global world. What do you want to be known for? What are the values that you want to be known? What do you want South Africa to be associated with? And I think we've lost it many times. We are very inconsistent in how we position ourselves. I mean, it's good that now that we're fighting for the plight, for the rights of the Palestinian people, but we haven't fought for the rights of the LGBTIQ community in Uganda when Museveni came up with crazy laws to say to criminalize being gay and lesbian. Robert Mugabe did crazy things to his own people. We stood by him. So we are not consistent. And when you're not consistent in that way, it will be just a matter of time before people remind you of it. So we have to be mindful that we live in a community of nations, in a community of Africans. What do we want to be known for and to be respected for? And I think that these key elements have not been respected in terms of Brand South Africa. That's why we are so all over the place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I'm going to pose some questions, and I would like to first pose this question to Mr. Tselane. In his experience working with elections and as an independent institute, how has the normal citizens stood up and challenged the status quo? How can civil society, in this instance, make an impact on the forthcoming elections? Do you recognize that, or do you monitor that as you go about preparing for elections? And this question will also be posed to the panel to say, can the people's can TUSAM, as the United South Africa movement, in its summit, find strategic partners to deepen the relationship with the like-minded organizations. So I'm coming to that, but for now, I just want to ask Mr. Tselane, in his experience, how has he worked with, what has been his observation on the civil society? Mr. Tselane?
Civil society has got an important role to play in the electoral process. But remember that one of the things that really are critical in terms of giving people confidence on electoral processes is whether public representatives do deliver what they're supposed to deliver in a democracy. I often say that public representatives are largely responsible for discrediting the democratic project because once people get elected into position on the basis of a particular ticket and they are in a position where they can be able to exercise some kind of authority once elected, and they don't use that authority to deliver on what they've been elected to do, it begins to raise issues around the importance of a democratic project. And in South Africa, you therefore begin to see a myriad of the so-called service delivery protest. It means people have lost hope in democracy to deliver their hopes, and they've realized that instead of actually electing people who will represent their interest and hope that those people will be able to do things that will cater for their interests, it is a lot more easier for government to listen to them when they block roads, when they dig trenches on the highways, when they make basically an area ungovernable. Government responds quite quicker to those kind of communities, and they're able to deliver services to those communities. So a culture is beginning to develop in our society where people have lost hope or are gradually losing hope on democratic project and people participating. And you see this in terms of the lower voter turnout. We've got 42 million people who are eligible to participate in the process of the elections, and you end up only with 26 million, and recently with 27 million people having registered. Even those 27 million who are registered, not everyone participates in the electoral processes. So there is a problem of whether ordinary people can realize dividends of a democratic project. And then if the electoral process are able to deliver that dividend, or if informal arrangement of protests through service delivery protests actually deliver those kind of things. So civil society has got an important role to play, basically to be able to be a go in between and make sure that public representatives deliver what they are supposed to be delivering, and then making sure that ordinary people are able to use avenues that are available to them, such as the elections, to be able to elect the kind of the leadership that will be able to cater for their interests.
Thank you so much, Seth, for weighing in on that. Gentlemen, Mr. Xanthios and Mr. Mueng, between the two of you, I've seen a lot of engagement with various civil society movements and various key stakeholders in the leadership space. Now, I would like to pose this question to you directly. Any one of you can take it. I know you're busy arranging a People's Summit, and my wish is to see June 24, 25, 1955 come to life where the Freedom Charter was drafted, a People's Summit of note. Now, can the People's Summit as proposed by the United South Africa Movement deepen the relationship between the like-minded participating organizations? And if so, if you don't mind, which organization do you think share the same thought or sentiments with you in terms of ensuring that we get our South Africa that we love back? We've lost the South Africa that we love, and it's we want it back, and civil society has a role to play. Gentlemen?
Yeah, James, you want to go? Or should I go first?
No, you go first.
Look, in the same way that on the political side, in terms of political parties, there's no homogeneity. There's a lot of differences between, I don't know, more than 200 political parties who are registered in South Africa. We also have all these parallel streams running on the civil society side. So one can never, there's not a political party, no civil society initiative in South Africa that can claim to speak for everybody. But it doesn't mean that people must not start talking. So we have been talking to many people across the board. We are also the founding members of what is now known as the Convergence for South Africa, because we realize that we can't do it on our own. And the aim is not to own the space. The aim is to be an instigator of the conversations that will get people to realize that actually the power is in their hands. I found that many South Africans have retreated into bubbles, because it's almost like somebody with a cancer who realizes that they're going to die. They don't have a lot of time to live. So they decide to just focus on the things they can do. Everyday life, go to the beach, walk your dog, cycle, do whatever, you go to the movies, go to parties, prize. But there's this big thing happening. The political people don't know what to do with politics in South Africa. And I think South Africans need to reach out across the board. We are South Africans. This is who we are. We will agree on some things. We will disagree on some things. And I think that we need to. There are some things that make us who we are as a country. Nobody can deny that. Things that make us, whether you are Muslim, Christian, gay, lesbian, Sotho, Pedi, Tswana, Hindi, etc. There are some things that make us who we are, and you see how we celebrate things that bring together. It's a pity that a lot of them come and go. Like, say, the Rugby Cup. I mean, we tend to face that. That's something that has got all these pictures of videos of South Africans celebrating stuff together. I think we need to agree. We need to rebuild a basket of things that make us South Africans. It doesn't mean that we will not differ on that. So you can still be Muslim or gay or lesbian or Sotho or Zulu, if those are the things that you value, that you want to. But as long as those things don't come in between us being South African. And I think we've lost that, because we didn't have the kind of leadership after Mandela. Mandela was really good at reminding us that we have this project to build together. And I think other countries and the other leaders after him tended to be too sectarian, if you want, in their approach to South Africa. And that has led to people being lost, in what we are, where we're trying to go. So you refer to the charter. 1955, South Africans came together from diverse backgrounds. They said, what do we want? It was in the belly of apartheid. What kind of country do we want? And they came up with the Freedom Charter after a number of meetings. There's about 3,000 or so South Africans, but coming from different backgrounds, movements, and stuff. And some of the clauses of the Freedom Charter have informed the constitution of the democratic South Africa. And some of them looked at the Freedom Charter as this is the beginning of the making of the future constitution of South Africa. Now, that was in 1955. In 1994, 1992, 93, 94, those were political formations that came together to strike a deal, because there was some form of stalemate, right? Okay, guys, nobody's going to win this thing. The economy is suffering. Let's get together and agree on some things. And because we are diverse South Africans, nobody must expect that they'll go into a room and walk away with everything they want. So we believe in TUSAM, the United South Africa Movement, that we need to go back and build and develop another charter. And that process has already begun. We're talking to many people, we're reaching out. We want South Africans to tell us, what kind of South Africa do you want to see emerge after these coming elections? And we'll build this charter, we'll develop this charter. It's almost halfway through, and we want to present it out there as so that it's not just the ADA, the ANC, the EFF, the Action SA, and all those guys in politics saying, okay, guys, vote for us. This is what we're going to do for you. We're going to do for you. We're asking South Africans to tell us, what do you want? Not political parties, ordinary South Africans. What do you want? What do you want to see? And this charter will be presented in a form. What do you want to see happen in the education sector, in the health sector, in foreign policy, in state-owned enterprises, in border control, in different aspects of running a state such as South Africa? What do you want? What kind of changes? And we structure this thing and put it out there. And we want to say to political parties, to those people who are ambitious, who are going in there, who think that they must be the next heroes of South Africa. We must be the heroes, the people. We want to say to them, this is what the people want. Okay, it's no longer about what you are offering us, it's about what we want you to do. And if you agree to do these things for us, then we'll endorse you, then we'll vote for you. But we don't stop there. We want to be looking over your shoulder. We want to make sure that if you say you're going to do these things and then you get elected and you do other things, we're going to be making so much noise over your head, so that next time we go to elections, you would have lost the legitimacy that we would have given you. So it's important that we, and all of the things that we want to see changed will take time. Not all of them are immediately implementable. We believe, for instance, and it's been said by even people like former Deputy Chief Justice Tselane, that the founders of our constitution placed too much power in the presidency, thinking that everybody is going to be like Mandela. Then we end up like a Zuma and other people who come in there and abuse those powers. They think, yeah, I'm so powerful. They think that South Africa belongs to them. South Africa is about them. It doesn't make sense. And I always repeat this two examples. One, the founders or the writers of our constitution did not foresee a time when we would have a Zondo Commission report in front of us, right? And that Zondo Commission report, according to the constitution, gets handed over to the president. But then the president in the system is also the president of the party. That is, thanks to which we are in trouble. So basically, you're coming up with this report that says these are the corrective measures that must be taken, and you're giving it to the boss of the gang that's messing up. That's why we shouldn't be surprised when no action is taken, because you're saying this is what you must do against yourself. I think that the Zondo Chief Justice Zondo Justice Zondo should have done the same thing that Thuli Madonsela did with the report on Nkandla, on state capture. She said this report cannot be given to the president to determine the terms of reference, because he's the man who's in trouble. He's at the center of the trouble. He says we must give it to the Chief Justice, which is what she did.
All right.
I think that Zondo should have come up with another solution, not to give the report to the ANC, which is the mess, the cause at the center of our mess, but to somebody else. Come up with something else. I don't know, another group of judges. He wasn't the Chief Justice at the time when the report came out. You should have handed it over to the acting Chief Justice or to the Chief Justice. So you need to come up with a way for these recommendations to be implemented. He didn't. Now we are in a mess, sitting there waiting for the crooks to decide what to do with themselves.
All right.
So there are many changes that must change, and we, the people, must play a part.
Okay. Thank you so much. I recognize your hand, Madame Leroux. James,
yes.
may I also ask you to weigh
Solly
in
mentioned,
on, yeah.
Sure. Solly mentioned a lot of really good things, and the topics were varied. But I think there was two kind of main questions that you asked us. One was, how can civil society defend the people's rights through fostering relationships with progressive, ethical, like-minded counterparts? And the other one was, can civil society associations deepen the relationship between like-minded organizations?
Yes.
So I'll start with this one. So indeed, civil society associations in South Africa can play a pivotal role in deepening the relationships between like-minded participating organizations. And there's a number of ways. One is through networking opportunities. Civil society associations provide platforms for organizations with similar goals and interests to connect. to share ideas, to collaborate on common initiatives through networking events, conferences, workshops. Participating organizations can forge meaningful relationships and explore potential areas of cooperation. Secondly, information sharing. Civil society associations serve as hubs for information sharing and knowledge exchange. We facilitate and disseminate relevant news, research findings, and best practices. This shared information fosters greater understanding of alignment and of objectives, leading to more effective collaboration. Then there's resource mobilization. By pooling resources and expertise, participating organizations within civil societies can amplify our impact and our reach. Collaborative efforts may involve fundraising campaigns, resource sharing agreements, or coordinated advocacy efforts. Now, Sally mentioned that we're one of the founding members of Convergence for South Africa, and we've also worked with South Africa's First Forum on different policy initiatives as well. Further is collective advocacy. So we can provide a unified voice for participating organizations to advocate for shared interests and priorities. And we can lobby efforts and public awareness initiatives. Associations can amplify the impact of individual organizations and influence policy decisions at the local, national, and even in international levels. Strategic partnerships, obviously. Civil society associations can facilitate strategic partnerships between participating organizations and other stakeholders. Joint research and publications, which I've mentioned between ourselves, TUSAM, and Convergence for South Africa and South Africa's First Forum. Mutual support and solidarity actions. Regular coordination and communication. These things are essential. Capacity exchange and programs for skills development and sharing, workshops, training sessions, and mentorship programs. By exchanging knowledge and expertise, we can exchange best practices as well. So to summarize, civil society associations play a pivotal role in deepening relationships between like-minded participating organizations through a variety of means. In addition to collaborative advocacy, knowledge sharing, strategic litigation, grassroots organizing, policy advocacy, and international solidarity, civil society can further strengthen bonds with counterparts through joint research and publications, mutual support and solidarity, regular coordination and communications, and capacity exchange programs. So these things can enable civil society organizations and their counterparts to amplify our impact, advocate for meaningful change, and advocate shared objectives in pursuit of social justice and human rights. The other question was, how can civil society defend the people's rights through fostering the relationships? And so in this case, there's collaborative advocacy. So by forming alliances and partnerships with progressive organizations that share similar values and goals, we can amplify our collective voices and advocate for the protection and promotion of citizens' rights. Furthermore, there's knowledge sharing and capacity building. I've mentioned that. Strategic litigation and legal defense. Collaborative efforts between civil society organizations and progressive legal partners can facilitate strategic litigation and defend legal strategies to challenge human rights violations or promote accountability and secure justice for marginalized and vulnerable communities. We know that there's a lot of programs and laws that aren't in favor of the broader society. Community mobilization and grassroots organizing. Civil society organizations can collaborate on grassroots movement, and that's a big one. Because a lot of initiatives don't start from the top; they start from bottom up. And when you get the citizens involved, they have a stake in it, and they feel more empowered. International solidarity and advocacy. Civil societies can strengthen their advocacy for people's rights by forging international partnerships and alliances with progressive organizations. And so this is pretty big right now, as we know, because of the ICJ case, with Israel and Hamas. So we have to strengthen our international partnerships. So just to conclude that, fostering relationships with progressive, ethical, like-minded counterparts is essential for civil societies to effectively deepen people's rights, citizen rights, through collaborative advocacy, knowledge sharing, strategic litigation, grassroots organizing, policy advocacy, international solidarity, etc. So by building these strong partnerships and alliances, we can leverage collective resource expertise and advance social justice. So in a world where human rights are increasingly under threat, collaborative action among civil society organizations and our counterparts is vital to safeguarding the rights and dignity of all individuals and communities across the country.
Oh, thank you, James. Yeah, if this was a political part, I would say, Viva James, Viva! James for president. This sounds like music to my ears. I don't know about the rest of the people attending this session. And it makes me want to behave like a young man who says, when are we filling the stadium? Because this is the type of things that South Africans need to hear. These are the type of things that needs to be shared with South Africans. I'm glad, ladies and gentlemen, this session is being recorded and it's also on TUSAM Facebook page. After the meeting tomorrow, by tomorrow midday, it will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can search for it using the role the role of civil society in a democracy, so you can access this. Do make time and listen to this recording, and this will still be on Facebook after this meeting. Very insightful, James. Regine raised her hand when I asked the question. I would like her to weigh in before I move on to the next question. And Pumzi Pala, I recognize you and I can see your comment. I will then also bring in your comment to the attention of the panelists and ask one of them to respond to your comment. Regine, Madam.
Thanks, Victor. Thank you so much. I just wanted to jump in with what Solly said, because I need to, unfortunately, also jump off at 8 o'clock.
At 8 o'clock, yeah.
So I'll be quietly leaving at the side here. But I wanted to add what Solly was saying in terms of that the importance, and the very first thing when it comes to building a brand is the vision. But I think what's also important to add to that, when we look at a brand and when we look at all of this, a brand is a behavior. So it is driven by your values, and it doesn't help just having, as I said earlier, beautiful words. It is all about the actual behavior. Your reputation is the consistency of it, the consistency of that behavior over a long period of time. And part of building the brand, part of building your reputation, but a business and the government and all of these entities is, I always encourage my clients or the people when I have workshops is to say, what is our unique selling proposition? What sets us apart from other entities, organizations, governments, and be that as it may? And if you've only got 8 words to describe your unique selling proposition, what would that be? And ideally, you want everybody to have the same wording, the same vision, the same thing that we are working towards. And I was thinking about this very much when I was traveling a while ago, because we don't currently have that as South Africans. I think if we look back at many, many years back, we could very easily say we're the Rainbow Nation. And we pretty much strove towards that. We were very much united in that. Rugby, the soccer does unite us to a certain extent as well, but we're very fragmented. So we definitely need to find that, what is that glue that be proud of. Proudly South African, obviously, at some point was also one of those phrases, but it's more than just a phrase. It's that whole behavior around it. So I just wanted to say that that's also something we need to consider and think of going forward.
Thank you so much. Just trying to also give the panelists a break and just bring in this comment before we lose it. Pumzi Pala says, I voted in 1994 and the euphoria at that time was the right, an opportunity to vote for the first time in a country that had labeled me as a second-class citizen. The difference between then and now is that legislation depriving me of human rights and democracy was all repealed. However, I have yet to see the manifestation of the acknowledgement of my right to human dignity, freedom, and equality. We are led by leaders who do not have an understanding of the value system in our constitution, and more concerning, a people who are still mentally oppressed and do not fully understand their rights. Very, very sensitive comment brought by Pumzi Pala. Anyone would like to comment on that?
Maybe Terry would be interesting to respond to that.
Yeah. Yep. Mr. Tselane?
It's a very interesting statement because I don't think it's a question.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically deals with the kind of the leadership we have, having ushered a democracy in the country, whether the kind of the leadership we have has had the capacity to deal with the kind of the challenges that the society has, or they've been able to deal at least with some of the expectations of what a democratic government is supposed to do. I was absolutely horrified when during the celebration of the ANC's anniversary, the president indicated that people in social grants have moved from 4 million to 28 million since the dawn of democracy. And I was saying to myself, this is not something to really celebrate. You've got to really, really be horrified by this, that in a country where only 26 million people are registered to participate in the elections, you've got 28 million people who are on social grants. It's an indictment on the kind of the leadership we have and the kind of the society we live in. And I agree that the kind of democracy we expected has not really yielded the kind of benefits to the society that one would have expected in a democracy. And I think it is largely because of the kind of the leadership we have in the country.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Tselane. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have another question to pose, a rather heavy one. And this is common among the civil society. And the question is that how effective can civil society charter be compared to political parties? Because most of the time when civil society movements are formed, people saying, are you a political party? Are you going to register for elections? So how effective in your understanding and the dream that you had to put together the TUSAM, and you are joined by big brains who shared your vision?
I like this question. Thank you very much. Look, when we started TUSAM and we launched it in April last year, prior to launching it, we started this thing in January 2021. And we have involved in our many conversations, people in business, people in politics, people in civil society, activists from across the board. And we'll be proud to launching this thing. We called in a forum like this one, many political parties. And they came, the leaders of many, especially those in the opposition, not the EFF, but all the others, many of the other main ones came to these meetings. And then we also, so on one day we called them politicians, political parties, and the next day we called civil society activists and people, representatives of civil society formations across the board. And the feedback we got from many civil society guys was, we like what you are saying, we will support you provided you don't become a political party. So we've seen how Circle for or Rivonia Circle became Rise Mzansi. We've seen how One South Africa movement became BOSA. And so we didn't want to trick the people into supporting something that would suddenly become a political party. And I think the strength that we have, and we still have access to a lot of these political parties, it's a pity that the ANC and the EFF don't really take our call. But the strength that we have is that we are seen to be neutral. We are not an offshoot of any political party. So we can have conversations with many people and they can trust that we are not there to promote, to say to them, go and vote for X, Y, or Z, because that's not what we want to do. So I believe that we need a structure that can speak without standing for a political party. And of course, we need to make partnerships, because we are not going into politics. You asked about the charter. So we're going to have this fancy charter that says this is what the people want. But to really implement the things that we want in there, you need to be into the system, right? So that's why we thought to the charter would be appended some kind of pledge. So we go to political parties that we think might be prepared to engage, to listen to us, and to take these things on board. We say, are you prepared to support these things? These are the principles that the broad policy directions that we'd like you to push once you get in there. If they say yes, we say we sign here. So we're going to support you, we're going to endorse you. People ask us, but whom do you want us to vote for? There's nobody to vote for. So we don't know, up to now, we've never recommended any one political party. But we want to get to a point where we say, these are the parties we can work with because they share our thinking about where South Africa must go. And again, these things are always like, there are no legal obligations that will be on any party. It's like a love relationship. You go into a relationship or in business relationship, somebody makes promises, they're going to do this and Y, Z for you. And the next thing they wake up being a monster. What do? You walk away, right? Hopefully not with too many wounds. So we want for there to be so much support that there's some kind of moral obligation on people who agree with what we are saying, because we're not going to get legal obligation. But we need partners, so we can't do it on our own. While we need partners in the civil society space, we also need partners in the political space, political parties that are led by people who are ethical, who really sincerely want to see South Africa healing from the 30 years or almost 20 plus years of systemic damage.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Wing. I've got two more questions, but before I do that, let me just open the floor, and so that most of our guests don't lose their thought trail on what has been discussed so far. We're having a conversation, ladies and gentlemen, on the role of civil society within our democracy. And something just crossed my mind this afternoon as I was having a shower, and I'm thinking, by the way, the churches are also civil society, né? A church is one, because the pastor has to preach good news and change and many other things, but let's leave that for another day. I'd like to open up, if anybody would like to raise a question or a comment, you can just unmute, introduce yourself and pose your question. I have
a question for Terry.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me start with the panel, for the panelists to cross question each other. They're not open. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I want to, Terry, I know that people have the right not to vote. People keep saying it's a constitutional right not to vote. What do you think about, and what would you say to people who are saying, I'm so tired, nothing changes, I'm not going to vote? What would you say to them?
Of course, we've got to encourage people to participate in the democratic process, and also to keep telling them that the only way that they can make a difference is by voting. But at the same time, I understand that after you've told one person, same thing for 30 years, you come to a realization that if the public representatives do not deliver to this person the kind of the things that we have said they will deliver once they come into power, all these years, and then you've been saying this thing every 5 years, you begin to sound like something that cannot be believed. And therefore, I understand fully those who say that they do not want to participate in the elections, they do not want to vote because voting and democracy is not yielding the kind of the results that they want. Even though deep down I still believe that one day we'll be able to have the public representatives who will be able to represent the interest of the communities from which they come. I cannot dismiss individuals who are dismayed by the fact that democracy.
Excuse me, Mr. Tselane. I'm going to have load shedding, ladies and gentlemen. The generator takes a few seconds to kick in, just in case I fall off. I will be back. Everybody, please stay in the group. I've connected with another device. So yes, okay, carry on, sir.
Yeah, so I think I would not be honest with myself if I kept repeating the same message to the same person for 30 years, that their situation will change if they elect the kind of leaders that will represent them. And then every 5 years, they continue to vote, and they vote for leaders that they think will be able to represent their interest. And those leaders, once they're in power, they only look after their own interests and those of their families and people around them. And it would be difficult, and it is difficult for me as a person who believes in democracy, who believes in democratic processes, who believes that it is important for everybody to vote, to keep on telling the same person, maybe one day you will eventually find a public representative that will be able to look after your interest. So that's my position. I know that it is ambivalent, but at the same time, it is my true opinion about what I think is actually happening. Democracy is important, but democracy must yield results for ordinary people. If people do not see positive results of democracy, they will celebrate when there is a coup in Burkina Faso. They will celebrate when there's a coup in Mali. And they will also celebrate when there's a coup in Niger, because they believe that the leaders who are there, and by the way, those leaders appear to be completely different from the leaders who were democratically elected. They appear to be really for the interests of their communities. And I think, as I've said at the beginning, public representatives are the ones who really discredit the whole democratic project.
Thank you so much, sir. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Regine has just gone off, as mentioned earlier on, that she'll be attending a meeting. I see Gauta is already on load shedding mode. I am not yet, but I'm ready. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open the floor for you to ask questions. This is not one way. We are having a conversation. Please raise your hand and make your comment. I see Gauta, our very busy gentleman who was supposed to be part of the panel. Unfortunately, he was hectic. He couldn't make it on time to submit his profile and his pictures for the e-flyer. Again, Any questions, comments before I pose the next two questions to the panelists? Any takers? This is not an auction, I would say, going once, going twice. I am not going once or twice anymore. I would like you to participate. I see Kenna Kigiri.
I'm sorry, Chair. I'm surprised that Rauta does not have an opinion. That's very unusual.
That's very unusual, yeah. Very unusual. He was supposed to talk about sustainability. Perhaps I should put him on the spot. Mr. Komane, sir.
Yes, sir.
How do we sustain? How do we sustain? I know it's a bit difficult now to talk about sustainability because our democracy is in crumbles at the moment, but we need to fix it. We need to do the fixing, and this is the process of So
yes.
your take so far on the conversation. Please give us your
thank you
2 minutes.
so much. So thank you, Victor and Terry, for putting me on the spot. The democracy project is in danger of unraveling. The central pillars of our democracy, number one, the public service, civil society, business, parliament are all going the wrong direction. Professor William Gumede says, we don't have a set of values, although they are there in the constitution, but they're not driven from a central point, leadership. We don't have a father figure. We don't have the kind of role model that we, a society, must have. Like you said, Soli, before about Mandela. Organizations like the IMF and the investor community have been saying that South Africa is on a slippery slope, and these organizations identify various things, and they see the collapse of the public service in the next 2 years. They see non-sustainable debt levels, high interest rates, and like now you see investors not willing to invest into Transnet and the Eskom. Investors don't want to. The government issued a tender for Transnet, where Transnet, people who operate Transnet trains from Johannesburg to Durban. There was not a single tender. So we are there. We need to retrace our steps. How do we fix that? I mean, we know that what do we have to fix? We call it structural reforms or political reforms that must be taken. The government used to have these 9-point plans, which were given to them by the IMF and investor community, like restore public sector efficiency, fix their SOEs, invest in agriculture and an agrarian reform, invest in manufacturing, ICT, logistics, and so on and so on. Now, the government took a different path. They would mouth that. The financial minister, Pravin Gordhan, would mention these 9 points, these structural reforms, in his budget speech, saying that he's investing in those 9 points, which we call medium-term strategic framework. Now, for 10 years, they did nothing about it until those issues deteriorated to the extent that now we have a totally inefficient and broken public service, broken public sector, infrastructure broken, and we don't have the money. We don't have the money to put into those infrastructure build programs. I mean, Ramaphosa is no longer calling his infrastructure summits because his investor-led growth strategy has failed because investors don't want to come in. Now, it's a chicken and egg story. You need loans to invest in restructuring and rebuilding public, restart the economic development trajectory. You need money, but the investors don't trust you because you don't fix your government. Your executive doesn't look like it's willing to to lead from the front in an ethical and committed way. They don't want to bring in people who will convince the investor community that we have an ethical government, we have a sustainable government, we have a capable state. Investors want to see a strong public service before they come in, because their investments will not be sustainable in a situation where the public service is run by criminals. The criminals are running amok in the public companies, in municipalities, in key areas of the state, like the police at the top, the Hawks in Cape Town. Their meetings are attended by criminals. So the question of sustainability is at the heart of South Africa's turnaround strategy. But you need that firm leadership at the top that will take these reforms, as Soli has said, bravely, in a committed manner, and showing the ethical side of this new dawn.
Thank you, Mr. Komane. Thank you so much. You see now, if I had you on as a panelist, man, hey, you'd be really, both would say both humble and tolerant. Yeah, I feel like putting somebody on the spot, very quiet. We've had many as a boys' club. At least we had Regine. Madame Tabiseng, very quiet, sitting down there and cool. It will be very interesting to hear from you. If this is the Tabiseng I know, yeah, on TUSAM, am I right? Not too sure. All right. Anyway, anyone else would like to make a comment? And I just loved ESCOM for a change. They're being very kind to me. Yes.
Victor, can I?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes. So I just wanted to pick up on what Tauta was mentioning about sustainability, right? Sustainability is long term, so you need something concrete to sustain. Whereas right now, South Africa is almost it's in a crisis mode. So it needs to change now in order for it to be sustainable. You know, like the IMF downgraded the growth from 1.8% to 1%. You know, and they're saying that it's because of ESCOM load shedding. It's disruption to the economy. The corruption perception index, it's the lowest ever. It just came out last week. So the corruption is now worse than it's ever been. You know, South Africa's been grey listed. And there's been no genuine move that have been made in prosecuting the implicated in state capture. None whatsoever. You know, they failed in extraditing the Guptas. You know, and in actual fact, the international organizations like the IMF, they've downgraded South Africa from a democratic country to what they called a flawed democracy. So it's getting so low, you know, that's what, one step above a failed democracy. You know, so there must eliminate regulatory and institutional deficiencies that hinder the growth of business and industries, you know, like BEE. But yet there persists anti-business and anti-wealth economic policies within the country. You know, and furthermore, there's rampant crime. It persists from various organized crime syndicates, your mafias, to brazen lawlessness. You know, just the other day, there was a case where there was police impersonations. You know, these organized crime units now have cars that have been wrapped, you know, like car wraps, just like they're identical police, and they're pulling over citizens. And the other day in Ekurhuleni, one was actually caught, and within the car, they had pistols and an AK-47. So you have, you know, organized crime that are acting with, like, what were they doing in order to get these assets? And then they're going around pulling people over with you know, like, so right now we're in a state where we need a recovery expert,
All right.
not
Okay.
just,
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks to James. Sorry to hold you right there. We've got where's I lost this gentleman? Oh, Mr. Igiri, Kenneth Igiri. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you've connected from, and ask your question. I see you raised your hand. Either a question or a comment. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that's Victor, and it's a comment. My name is Kenneth Igiri. I'm a regular guy, but I'm very much interested in the progress of Africa. I live in Ghana. I am from Nigeria. So I was listening to the first speaker. I came in a little late. My apologies for that. And it's great to hear your voice, James, Dimitri. Great to hear your voice. Yes.
I'm glad you joined us.
So I was intrigued as I listened, and of course I've been following a bit of what is happening in South Africa, because these problems are the problems that we grew up with in Nigeria, and that we are also seeing emerging. Today, the inflation rate in Ghana is about 40-something%. In Nigeria, is 28% official rates. The power problems we've been dealing with in Nigeria have been there for ages. You are now seeing load shedding in South Africa, and it's difficult for people to cope because they're not used to it. When Nigeria, people have adjusted since. People go to China to make generators to import into Nigeria and so forth. And today it seems to be getting worse. So the reason I mentioned that is that we in West Africa are looking up to nations like South Africa, like Kenya, saying that, look, I mean, people are exiting Nigeria to come to South Africa. If they can't go to Europe, if they can't go to America, they want to come to South Africa. We still see South Africa as the most developed nation in Africa. Now, what will happen if that reputation drops? That's on the one hand. What happens if that reputation drops? Where is our target? Where is our hope, so to speak? That's on the one hand. But I like to say that I always ask myself, what can I do independent of those who are in power? Because in my view, to a very large extent, those in power do not have the intent to change in a lot of scenarios. When somebody doesn't want to change, somebody likes the status quo, what he needs is not more experts to help him. What he needs is not economic policies and stuff, because he just doesn't want to. He likes things the way they are, because like the last speaker said, he wants to be the country to be of benefit to him, his family, and his friends. So are there things that we can do that do not have to have dependency on governments in power? That's one question I have. The second thing I have is, on the other hand, on the flip side, being that South Africa joined BRICS. Now, James talks about a lot of ratings that we received, and from largely Western, bodies, so to speak. Could these ratings also be as a result of the fact that, once, so to speak, South Africa is not taking sides with the West? So those are two things. What can we do without depending on the government in power? Number two, are there other hands playing in the background in the outcomes at a macro level that we may not be aware of? Thank you.
Wow. Wow. James, you've hit the nail on the head. Gentlemen.
Leave it up to Kenneth to pose such good questions.
The question, therefore, to all of us, including James and Solly, sorry to call you by first names. I was brought up properly to respect. The question is, will the charter bring together individuals and communities and people who have experience to foster constructive engagement? This is going to answer Mr. Igiri's question as to what do we do, where to then. We know South Africa as a gateway to Africa, but the rate at which we're going, we're really destroying that beauty and that trust we have as a country. Will the TUSAM Charter and many other civil society movements make a difference?
If you give me a minute, I want to throw a question in there for Terry before he ends up going, and then I want to respond to this. A quick one.
Okay.
If you look at the current global environment, which is fragmenting, if you look at the growing evidence that these established democracies think that the global environment must run in a way that certain rules apply to others and not to them. 3 of the guys who hold the countries, who hold vetoes in the United Nations Security Council do not subscribe to the ICC, to the International Criminal Court, for instance. We see the ICJ made a ruling last week. The most powerful country, America, is basically showing the middle finger to it. Now, with all of these things happening, this hypocrisy happening, and this is my question to Terry, do you think that it emboldens leaders in the in the global south, in Africa, for instance, to say, well, they can do their thing, we can do their thing? In other words, there's no longer a center of global standards in terms of ethics, leadership, governance. So everybody's going to be doing their own thing, and America or Russia or none of these people can tell them, guys, come on, that's not democratic, behave this way, because nobody holds the standard anymore. So the things that we're talking about in South Africa, where no leader holds the moral high ground, they are also happening in the global environment where nobody holds the moral high ground, and that worries me. Terry, what do you think we should do? I'm taking my question. Now, to respond to some of the things that have been shared, the thing that worries me about BRICS is that, okay, fine, we can use BRICS to show the middle finger to the West, right? So we're going to do our own thing, we're going to redefine certain things. But if you look at the key players in BRICS, Russia, China, if Iran comes in, those countries do not respect human rights. So it's actually, the deals are made by the political elite in Africa. We're going to join this formation, we're going to join this formation. We, the people, are never consulted. So what I believe we need in Africa is almost like a Pan-Africanist civil society formation that says, what do the people of Africa want? What do you want? Can these people, I live in Switzerland. Some of you know already, I live in Switzerland. Now, Switzerland is not politically part of Europe, of the EU, but now there are some discussions between Switzerland and the EU on some collaboration. And what I see coming up here strongly is, well, the people have to agree first. So the politicians can't make a decision on Switzerland adjusting its relationships with the rest of the EU if the people are not consulted. The people have to say, yes, we support it, no, we don't. In Africa, they don't care about what you and I think. They just make decisions. We're going to join BRICS. We're going to stop working with America. We're going to stop working with this guy. We, the people, must just follow. So we are being treated by our own politicians, the political elite in Africa, as if we are children. They must make decisions for us, and we must just follow. Maybe that has to change. No, that has to change over time. And this is not going to be a one-event thing. It's a process to change the culture, that we need to stop putting politicians on pedestals like kings and princesses, that they can just lord it over us. If that doesn't change, they will continue doing the things that they do with no accountability to the people. Thank you. So the TUSAM Charter is just the beginning of a journey. And like I said earlier, we don't expect that we'll change many things overnight. We start a journey somewhere, and over time we build it up. As a train leaves a station, it usually leaves at a slow speed, but over time it'll gain momentum. We'll get more and more people talking to us, and hopefully we'll build this strong civil society accession, if you want, of control.
Okay, thank you, President Wang. Now, the last question to the panel. Is there hope for a better South Africa?
Well, I would like to hear what Terry has to say to my comment about.
Oh, okay.
Let me put it this way. Democracy as a concept has remained constant for many, many years. And it has become an academic thing to talk about democracy. Democracy must justify itself for its existence and for people to believe in it. Because for as long as it is only us who are educated who keep on talking about the lofty goals of democracy, and for ordinary majority, democracy does not yield anything. It is going to remain something that is out there that is elusive. So democracy has got a responsibility to justify itself without having to justify itself through academic literature. And then to be able to justify itself, it must justify itself by delivering services to people. If democracy cannot do that, then what good is there in democracy? Perhaps we've got to start finding other mechanisms through which societies have got to be governed. And then I've indicated earlier on the issue of what is happening is in West Africa, to be saying that if the majority of people are ululating and celebrating a coup, then we've got to ask ourselves a serious question about this democracy concept, whether it has outlived its usefulness, whether it is still able to yield the necessary result to the people that it's supposed to be yielding results to. Freedom without any tangible results to changing people's lives becomes something that only exists in academic papers and not something that the majority of people would actually want to embrace. So there is a lot that still has to happen in order for us to be able to say that we are moving as a society to a particular direction. And I'm saying it is starting with having to not accept biblically the notions and concepts that have existed over the years and think that those concepts are still relevant today. All of us here in this platform would love democracy to continue and to give us the results. But you just have to go outside this platform in order for you to be able to check as to whether indeed ordinary people are benefiting from this concept of democracy, if it actually even means anything to them. And then my suspicion is democracy is beginning to lose its value, and it requires reconceptualization. And for as long as, or alternatively, the society needs to reconceptualize a different system of governance, separate from dictatorship and separate from democracy. I don't know what that system is, but we need to start thinking about that, because democracy and freedom have not actually yielded any positive results for the overwhelming majority of our people. There's a second aspect I wanted to respond to, but I've forgotten the nuance that Shirley had brought in, and I wanted to respond to that. I'm not too sure as to whether we still have time for him to just repeat a little bit what he was saying.
It was about the fragmentation in the global environment and the fact that no country holds the moral high ground anymore. We used to look at America, for instance, for democratic example, but it's strong countries question the innate international institutions. Then why must we be obliged to respect those institutions?
Absolutely, I think it's a very important thing, because it's the same as having to reconceptualize this concept of democracy. We've got to reconceptualize also multilateral organizations and what those organizations mean to the society. 1945, when we agreed on the United Nations, it's many, many years ago. Things have changed. We're now living in the world of artificial intelligence and big data and machine learning. Are these structures relevant? They're not able to respond to anything. I mean, there are things happening in Ukraine. They're not able to respond to that. All the structures, they're not able to respond to the Middle East. They're not able to respond. There is not even a single conflict that multilateral organizations have been able to respond to. Whether you're talking about Libya, you're talking about Iraq with Saddam Hussein, you talk about every little conflict that has happened in the world. Multilateral organizations are completely quiet. People are dying in Palestine. Multilateral organizations are not able to arrest that situation. The question is now, what need is there for multilateral organizations when they cannot actually be able to respond to a single conflict? And it's not only now as a result of the Middle East conflict, which has been there, by the way, on the agenda of the United Nations for such a long time. The question is, do you actually even need the United Nations? I mean, what will happen if the United Nations tomorrow is eradicated and is completely removed? Because United Nations is not doing anything for anybody. You get there to the Security Council, one country just vetoes the decisions of, and we basically on autopilot at an international level. We don't need any of these things. And the reason why Russia is fighting the way it is fighting is because ultimately it is always going to be a big man who controls what is going on. And multilateral organizations don't mean anything. US has been doing it as a superpower, and they've gone to Afghanistan, they've gone to Iraq, they've gone to Cuba, they've gone to Vietnam, they've gone to everywhere as superpower to impose their ideals on the society. And then no one has actually been able to respond to that superpower. The United Nations, in spite of the fact that it has been there during all these atrocities and the dictatorship by the US, there has never been any change that has actually happened. Why do you still need multilateral organizations? Why do you need UN? Scrap the thing and start afresh.
Yeah. Right. Now, thank you, Mr. Tselane. President Nguyen, I think I'm just going to hold you back there a while. It is 12:30. We're supposed to finish at 12:30, but remember, we started 10 minutes later. May I borrow that 10 minutes? So we finish exactly 20 to 9. But before we do that, there's one last question, gentlemen. Is there room for a sustainable change in South Africa? But before you answer this question, as you answer this question, take into consideration the comment made by Salome. She says, I distinctly remember how we sacrificed our studies during the 1985 boycott at the University of the Western Cape. It was driven by the United Democratic Front, Dr. Alan Busak, the SRC, and the masses. People had so much hope for the future and the new South Africa. We fought as one. 30 years later, the same people have lost their passion to make a change. We'll really have to come up with a plan or method to change the status quo. I'm concerned about gender-based violence, especially the matter of women. Secondly, our justice system. Thirdly, the health and education system, just to mention a few. Taking that into consideration, how do we create a better South Africa and make it sustainable? This is your wrap-up comment, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Anyone can take
maybe I'll let James go first.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Solly. And thank you for the question. So yeah, there is room for sustainable change in South Africa. It's going to take a lot of effort. You know, look, it's insane to think that voting for the same political party over 30 years, that things will change. You know, they've been emboldened to act like they are the government, whereas they're not. They're a political party. But through power given to them by the electorate over 30 years, they've now, you know, it's basically they have the country in their hands. So things need to change. And it starts by voting and not for them. And look, and the political environment is changing such that coalitions are forming. So most likely there's going to be a coalition government after the 2024 elections. But first, so to build sustainable change, there's a number of things that, you know, we need resiliency in our civil society. Civil society groups, you know, we have to step up to the plate. Democratic institutions, you know, despite the ongoing challenges and the occasional setbacks, you know, we maintain a strong democratic institutions, you know, our independent judiciary, a free press. You know, we still actually have a robust electoral system. You know, and these institutions, they're there to provide the checks and balances that over the executive power and safeguard democracy, basically. You know, youth activism, you know, that's actually growing leaps and bounds. You know, you can see it on social media influencers. There's a lot of them now are speaking up and speaking about change and having enough of the status quo. Community resiliency. You know, like we need things like municipal oversight committees to handle things like finances and procurement of services within the communities, from electricity to water and sewage. Community empowerment, you know, and that goes hand in hand. So that, and again, I mentioned before, this international solidarity. We have to strengthen our international bonds with the countries who have been by our side the whole time for over 30 years. Policy innovation. Despite the complex socio-economic and political landscape, we've demonstrated capacity for policy innovation and experimentation in various sectors, including BEE. Lots of policy innovation. It's not great. It's actually quite destructive to the economy and to foreign direct investment, but it's an innovative method that was approached. So, you know, and economic transformation. Obviously, we need the economy to transform, and it has to be more inclusive and equitable distribution of resources to address the socio-economic inequalities in the country. We need to reform our education system. A 30% pass rate is not a pass rate. I don't know whose books created that, but you know, it stems to reason that 50% is actually a pass rate. But also the instructors themselves, they have to have a tertiary education, and especially within the subjects that they teach. And the subjects themselves have to change. Time has changed. It's no longer 30 years ago. We have to teach ICT, skilled trades. There have to be employable skills and knowledge now, so that we attract business and different industries. You know, there's environmental sustainability. We have to promote environmental conservation, but at the same time, we have to realize that there's things that we need in the country. We need power. So if that requires for a period of time burning coal, then so be it. But there has to be a plan and path for change. And inclusive governance. We have to embrace inclusive governance models, participatory decision-making processes that are further down the chain, devolution of powers. You know, often it's the people closest to the events that make the best decisions. So we don't need a centralized government somewhere else making decisions for everyone. It's not always the best policies. You know, we have to reinvest in healthcare. You know, the healthcare, forget the term now, the new healthcare initiative where, you know, you basically taking people's choice away. That's not good.
NHI.
NHI.
Yes, NHI, exactly. So you're taking away, you're basically making one system, so that even if you have the capital to step out of the public system to give room and space to people who don't have the capital, you're not allowed to. But that's not an ideal system either. And promotion of social justice. You know, there's so many things in society that need upholding. You know, the human rights, equality under the law, addressing historical injustices, combating discrimination. You know, these things are essential for building a sustainable long-term path. But again, sustainability is long-term. So right now we have to get the proverbial train that's off the tracks back onto the tracks. And that requires a change in government. It's not going to change if the government itself doesn't change. We know this historically through 30 years of the same government. So that's number one.
Right.
So
We've
while
run
the
out of
path
time.
is sustainable.
Okay. All right. Not that. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Mr. Mweng, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And
Why not Terry?
I think our guests would like it. I actually wanted to ask. I want to create hope. I want to encourage South Africans, all of us here, when we leave, we go back, our family and friends, people in church, people at work, and everyone else, to think about the decision that we all need to take. Vote. And when we vote, let's vote with our heads. So I'll let you be the last then. I will ask Mr. Tselane. Mr. Tselane, year of elections. I know nobody knows when the elections are, but what is it that we need to look out for? What preparations need to go in place for us to go and cast our votes for change in South Africa?
We all have got to go and vote because democracy is important. It's important for the future of our children and children's children. But democracy, just like gold, it's a finite resource. We've got to understand that democracy can outlive its importance. And therefore, democracy has got to continue to justify itself for its existence. It can't just be us in academic literature who keep on talking about democracy as being important. When ordinary person, when you talk to them about democracy, it means absolutely nothing. You know, so it is. These elections are important, but just remember, even as we do this, that democracy has got a responsibility to justify itself. And how does it justify itself when it does not bring benefits to those people who've got no water, no roads, no sanitation, no housing, nothing? When they've got to take their children to school, they've got to cross crocodile-infested rivers without boats, without bridges, without anything. We've got to think seriously about the benefits of democracy to our people. I rest my case.
So, Mr. Mweng, a parting shot?
Yeah, my parting shot. Look, we sorry. Yeah, we need to stop voting like we are club members. You know, we need to stop looking for love in the wrong places. We need to realize as a people that the power really rests with us, and we mustn't look for perfection. So sometimes people think that if a political party doesn't stand a chance to be the overall winner, then it doesn't deserve their votes. But sometimes you vote for small parties because you want their voice in there. You want your chihuahuas in the National Assembly, people who are not afraid to say their thing. Let me tell you, people get shocked when I say this to them. When the EFF was looking Zuma in the eye, with their slogan, bring back the money, bring back the money, I voted for them. But do I want Malema to be president? Definitely not. All right. I voted for the ID when Patricia de Lille was very strong and a strong opposition leader in parliament. I voted for her. I stopped voting for her when she lost her way. So I don't vote. No party owns my vote. In the last elections, I voted for the DA. Okay. But no, I'm not a member of any political party. I think we need to stop thinking that if the party that you really like loses its way, therefore you're going to sit at home and not vote. Vote for the list of the devils. In politics, you look for the list of the devils. You're not going to find an angel. If you're looking for angels and you're looking for them in politics, you're in the wrong place. If you're looking for love in politics, you're looking in the wrong place. And Julius Malema said, there are no enemies forever, there are no friends forever in politics. That's very true. So you need to say, given where South Africa is today, and given what these guys are saying, what they've done, those who are in the system already, you can judge them on the basis of their past action. The new ones, you only have the promises they make. But you need to say, whom do you trust? Whom do you want to give a chance to? And again, don't think he's too small, they're too small, they're not going to be. Helen Suzman, during the many years of apartheid, was it's a very small party that would never overthrow the National Party. But people voted for her because she was that voice of reason in there, who looked the National Party in the eyes and said, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. We need in our democracy small voices who are going to not be afraid to say the right things. So please go and vote, stand up and vote. Don't go and say, because the ANC has decided. The ANC has disappointed many of us. I used to love the ANC with all my heart. I really did. I used to be active with the ANC in the Western Cape, where I used to be in their media committee ahead of elections. And at some point I said, these guys have lost it. I'm not going to do this anymore, because for me, South Africa is more important. So I really hope that more South Africans will stop looking for love in the wrong place and go there and vote. Vote for somebody else. If you're not happy with the ANC, just vote for a party that you think could do the right things, so that you keep their voice in the National Assembly. We can do this.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mweng. Not that I am getting any salary or anything from the from the election commissioner in South Africa, but this weekend is registration weekend, so we encourage people to go and vote. What a brilliant evening we had. We are live on Facebook, on TUSAM Facebook, so this you can continue watching on Facebook. This recording will then be packaged properly and loaded on YouTube. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. If you want to follow a civil movement, there's TUSAM and there's many others, but TUSAM has already gone to bed with a lot of and a number of civil societies or civil movements. So from me to you, I'm very grateful and thank you so much for taking time to participate in this first Africa Brand Summit in conversation. The next one will be at end of the month. We would like to talk about something very important. Let's talk about qualifications. We've all seen the recent saga of Miss Leoka, who says she holds a PhD, and that was not the case. So we're going to talk about reputation management, and honesty and trust and governance and a lot of things. From me to you, I'm very grateful. Thank you, Mr. Tselane. Thank you for your time and for your insightful. We owe each other coffee. I'm back in Joburg. I'm back from Luanda. I'm in Joburg. So sorry, you'll only join us in March when in South Africa. To everyone else, much grateful. Braray in Cape Town, Ms. Sibeko in Luanda, Angola, James in Canada. What time is it there, James?
It is 1:49.
In the morning.
13:49.
In the morning or in the
No,
afternoon?
No, in the afternoon.
In the afternoon. Oh, lucky you.
13:49. Yeah,
Lucky you still have an afternoon to yourselves. And everyone else, Brother Igiri, much appreciated. And those that just sat in the background, we have comments. What I'll do, I will take these comments, I'll put them on the Facebook page. So let us continue with this conversation. TUSAM will be there to answer or to respond to your comments and questions. From me to you, ladies and gentlemen, have a pleasant evening. I'm very
Thank you.
much grateful.
I'm very happy to
for
see
this,
all of you.
beautiful conversation. Cheers.
Thank you.
Righty. Good night.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.